Here we go. Wouldn't it be nice? Take one.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older?
They really show what it's like when everybody understands the part they have to play.
It'd be nice to live together.
There's something about the way those individuals blended together. They're all part of it.
Last week, Disney put out a trailer for the new Beach Boys documentary film that's coming out on Disney Plus on Memorial Day weekend. And I gotta say, man, somebody who really likes the Beach Boys and like classic music in general, like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you name it, 2000s, if you will. Like I like a lot of old school music, and the Beach Boys is one of those ones that every time I feel like listening to one of their songs, I have to put it on. Like every once in a while, I'll put on some of their classic songs, and you know, I just love listening to their music so much. It still holds up to this very day. But the Beach Boys documentary trailer actually got me thinking about going back and watching a movie that I talked about a long time ago when it came out in theaters, and actually is turning 10 years old this year. Its premiere is this year, and that movie is Love and Mercy.
God only knows what I'd be without you.
I do not want to be one more person who wants something from you, so I'm gonna walk away.
Why can't I be with her, Gene?
For the same reason, man, that you cannot be with anybody.
Love and Mercy is a 2014 biographical drama film directed by Bill Pohlad about the Beach Boys co-founder and leader Brian Wilson and his struggles with mental illness during the 1960s and the 1980s. It stars Paul Dano and John Cusack as the young and middle-aged Wilson, respectively, with Elizabeth Banks as his second wife, Melinda Ledbetter, and Paul Giamatti as the psychologist, Dr. Eugene Landy. The title comes from Wilson's 1988 song of the same name, and it alienates between the production of Pet Sounds in 1966 and his treatment under Landy's 24-hour therapy program in the late 1980s, in which Wilson actually calls the film very factual, albeit containing parts that weren't actually as factual. He actually had little involvement with the film itself, although Ledbetter was relied upon for the 1980s portions. The cast and crew maintained that nothing in the film was a Hollywood embellishment, and that everything was intended to be as truthful as possible. Conversely, Landy's son, Evan, felt that the father was unfairly portrayed, and some minor inaccuracies were noted by critics, a number of which were related to the minimal coverage devoted to Wilson's family and collaborators. Ledbetter said that Landy's treatment of Wilson was even worse than the film portrays. So, like I said, the plot of the movie is that it takes place in the 1960s, where you have a young songwriter and recording savant, Brian Wilson, played by Paul Dano, finding himself in the midst of an extraordinary success after scoring numerous hit records with the Beach Boys. Following a panic attack, he resigns from concert touring and ventures into the studio, intent on creating the greatest album ever made, Pet Sounds. Meanwhile, his grip on reality slowly loosens as he attempts to cope with the overwhelming voices in his head. Later in the 1980s, a middle-aged Wilson, played by John Cusack, is shown to be a broken, confused man under the pharmacological and legal thrall of his abusive therapist, Dr. Eugene Landy, played by Paul Giamatti. After meeting Wilson, Cadillac spokeswoman Melinda Ledbetter, played by Elizabeth Banks, is determined to save him from Landy's manipulation. And, the last couple of weeks and months, we've talked about how there's been a lot of musical biopics that don't work very well because my big problem with most musical biopics as of late is that it feels like they're too Hollywood. Like they're trying to portray the person as a hero who did nothing wrong. And even when he did something wrong, it was clear that there was a purpose behind it. Like, let's not go deep into darker aspects of the time periods for many of these different musicians. Like the best example, most recently, Bohemian Rhapsody and, the Bob Marley biopic, which, they're fine movies, but, if you're it's like, don't go for the strictly for the mainstream. Tell a story. Let's see a story where you actually delve into the darker side of things. And Rocket Man was a great example of how you can take that concept and do something unique and different with it. And I miss a lot of biopics that did that. In 2015, when this movie was officially released in the theaters, it was part of a very good year of great biopics. I mean, you had Straight Outta Compton, Steve Jobs, and now you have this movie here, which I think is, quite honestly, one of the best biopics I've seen. And it's one of those movies that I remember seeing it for the first time. It's just like, I can't believe how good this movie is, because really, the more I think about it, it doesn't feel like a Hollywood biopic. It feels like an earnest biopic that's trying to tell you the darker side of this legendary musician's career, like some of the darker elements of his life, and it works very well here. I really like what Brian Wilson's performances by John Cusack and Paul Dano deliver here. They're very different, but they're very similar electric performances. They are what carry the movie to the greatness of the film. And you have really great performances from both Elizabeth Banks and Paul Giamatti, and they're very, very good in the movie. Like, I really like Elizabeth Banks' performance a lot. Like, she doesn't usually get the proper credit for being more than just a comedic actress, but she really does put her all into a movie like this, and it shows on screen here.
I'm gonna beat this, and I'm gonna beat you!
Like, I love that facial expression right there by Elizabeth Banks. That's the face that, you know, as a kid, you used to get in trouble. You used to get in trouble for talking back to your parents, or you said a curse word or something like that. That's the face that either your mother or your father would give you as soon as you did something bad, and they're literally telling you without having to open their mouths, "The fuck did you just say to me, you little shit?" And then they smack you with like the paddle or in my family's case, a rolling pin. But I digress. But moments like that, I think, are really, really good. The performances here really are very, very good in this film, which is directed by Bill Pohlad, who had not directed a movie for 25 years up until this point. I mean, he's best known for being the executive producer on such films as Brokeback Mountain, Into the Wild, The Tree of Life, 12 Years a Slave, Wild. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff that are great movies in general, and you could tell that he knew he wanted to tell a story about one of the definitive music makers of his generation, and don't sugarcoat it. Like, don't do the typical Hollywood movie. I mean, this is the Hollywood biopic, and this movie does that. It's the anti-Hollywood biopic. It's a film that doesn't sugarcoat itself, doesn't simplify it for the audience. Like, it gives you the hard stuff that you really don't want. That you really should be knowing about these people in particular, especially somebody like Brian Wilson. And it definitely shows in this movie. It's a really, really good film that sadly has long been forgotten. I still think it's one of those movies that was one of the more underrated movies that came out in that last decade we had. I mean, it unfortunately didn't get a whole lot of attention when it came out in theaters. It was kind of like a limited release, and even when it came out on Blu-ray, like, you really had to go. This was back when Best Buy had physical media all over the place, so it was easy to find a copy there, or you had to go to Amazon to get it, but it was quickly forgotten, and not surprisingly, the Oscar season didn't help as they completely snubbed this movie, mostly because the film opened up in the middle of June and didn't have a big Oscar push, which is a shame, because this film, I really think, should have gotten a lot more attention. But then again, so many great movies don't get attention from the Academy Awards, because, you know, the Academy Awards can be corrupt sometimes, but that's for another time. But bottom line here is that this is a movie that I think a lot of people should really start to look for again. Love and Mercy really is a film that should be seen, especially if you're getting ready to watch this Beach Boys documentary coming up. And I think it's a film that definitely deserves to get a second chance at life again. I mean, it's a great film that has a number of great performances. It's not afraid to show you the darker side of the success of somebody. It's a film that is earnest. It feels like they're not dumbing it down so it could be a mainstream success. This is a film that really is one of the best films that came out that year in 2015, and it's one that I can't recommend enough. It's a film that needs to get more attention. If you have not seen Love and Mercy, do yourself a favor, check it out. I'm sure you can find it somewhere on streaming. If not, go to Amazon, pick it up on DVD or Blu-ray. I highly recommend it. I can't recommend this film enough. Love and Mercy. Watch it. It's definitely worth it. So, with that said, that's going to do it for this episode of the Reviewing Network Talks About. If you want to see what I had to say about why I think Bob's Burgers is the best primetime animated show right now, check out the link to that right there. Check out some of the other videos I've done, and I will see you guys next time.